Dr. Night Echoes. I was driving a needle-nosed Pete through South Texas around 4 a.m. I'd just finished a few days off, so I was wide awake. The roads out there are narrow. About 50 yards ahead, I saw something on the shoulder. At first, it looked like a pile of roadkill. As I got closer, I realized there was a man crouching over a deer carcass. I figured he was some sick person, or maybe a hunter trying to saw off the antlers. Then the light hit him fully. He wasn't moving the deer. He was eating it. He was ripping chunks of meat out of the stomach and shoving them into his mouth. He stopped moving and looked up. He didn't look at the truck or the bright lights. He looked straight through the glass at me. He stood up, and my heart dropped. The thing was massive. He was covered in thick, matted brown hair from head to toe. This wasn't a man. I didn't slow down. I started floored it, trying to get away as fast as possible. As I passed him, his head was level with my windshield. That truck had a very high, flat hood, which meant this thing was nearly 8 feet tall. The worst part was his eyes. They didn't look like an animal's eyes. They looked smart. He knew exactly where I was sitting inside that cab. He watched my face as I screamed past him. I didn't look back. I just kept driving until the sun came up. I've seen a lot on the border, but I've never felt hunted like I did that morning. I was pulled over at a quiet rest area in Nevada. It was around 2 a.m., and I was just trying to get some sleep in the back of my cab. The night was dead silent until the entire truck rocked hard. It felt like something heavy had jumped onto the back of my trailer. My first thought was that a thief was trying to cut my lock, or a hitchhiker was looking for a ride. I didn't get out. I stayed in my seat and adjusted my side mirror to see the rear. In the faint light of the rest area, I saw it. There was a shape pulling itself up the back of the trailer. It was pale, almost a dusty gray color. The most unsettling part was its arms. They were way too long for its body, reaching up and grabbing the top edge of the metal doors with ease. It stopped moving and stared directly into the side mirror. It knew I was watching. Its face didn't look human at all. The eyes were massive and caught the dim light just like a cat's eyes do in the dark. They were glowing with a cold, blank reflection. I didn't stop to put on my boots. I didn't even check the latch. I hopped straight into the driver's seat, slammed it into gear, and floored it. I hit the highway and watched the speedometer climb. When I hit 40 miles per hour, I felt a heavy thud as something fell off the back and tumbled into the darkness. I didn't look back to see if it got up. I just kept driving until I hit the next state line. There is a concrete tunnel near my hometown that everyone avoids after the sun goes down. It is a narrow. If you drive through it alone at night, something strange always happens. About halfway through the tunnel, your radio will suddenly cut out. It is replaced by a horrific sound. It is the sound of a woman screaming at the top of her lungs. The scream is loud and piercing. It does not come through the speakers of the car. Instead, it sounds like the person is sitting right in the back seat. The air inside the car gets heavy and vibrates with the noise. It feels like someone is shrieking directly into your ear. I was driving about 50 miles per hour when I first experienced it. My heart was pounding against my ribs. I tried to keep my eyes on the road, but I could not help myself. I slowly looked into the rearview mirror to check the back seat. There was nobody inside the car with me. However, I saw something much worse on the outside. A pale face was pressed hard against the back window. It was smeared against the glass from the outside. The skin was white and stretched tight. Even though I was moving fast, the face stayed perfectly still. It was stuck to the window like a wet leaf. The eyes were wide and filled with a deep, dark rage. The second I exited the tunnel, the screaming stopped. The radio came back on instantly. A upbeat song was playing like nothing had happened. I did not slow down to check the glass. I just kept driving until I reached the bright streetlights of the city. I never went through that tunnel alone again. I was driving through a deserted parking lot in the middle of the night. In the far corner of the lot, I saw 6 people. They were all dressed exactly the same. Each person wore a crisp white shirt and white pants. It looked very strange in the dark. There was no music playing at all. However, all 6 of them were dancing wildly. They were thrashing their bodies around like they were in a heavy mosh pit. Their movements were fluid and fast. It was completely silent. I slowed my car to a crawl. I just stared at the bizarre sight through my window. I could not understand what they were doing. Then, one of the dancers suddenly stopped. He was a tall man. He turned his head and looked right at my windshield. The other 5 people kept dancing. This man stayed perfectly still for a second. Then, he started walking toward my car. He was moving very quickly. He was closing the distance in just a few seconds. As he took his first few steps, his body seemed to just snap. I heard a loud, wet popping sound. It was clear even through my closed car windows. The man's spine bent forward at a sharp angle. He did not fall over. He stayed hunched over like a folding table. Then he began a weird, aggressive power walk toward me. His head was tucked low. His eyes were still locked on mine. I did not wait for him to reach the door. I slammed my foot on the gas and floored it. My tires screeched as I peeled out of that lot. In my mirror, I saw the others had stopped dancing. They were all standing in that same bent position. They just watched me drive away. I was hauling freight through the NV95 death stretch late one Tuesday night. That road is famous for being empty and dark for miles. Around 3 a.m., I pulled into a gravel turnout to catch a quick nap. I left the CB radio on low, just for some background noise. The radio suddenly crackled to life with a burst of static. Then, a kid's voice came through. It sounded small and shaky. "It is cold out here," the voice said. "Can I come in?" My skin crawled instantly. There was nobody for miles in any direction. I reached over and clicked the radio off. The voice didn't stop. It kept coming through the speakers, even though the unit was dark. "It is so cold. Please let me in." I started to panic. I grabbed the back of the CB and ripped the power wires straight out of the wall. The radio had no power, but the speakers kept whispering. "I am standing on your step now," the voice said. I froze in my seat. I slowly looked over at my driver's side mirror. A small, muddy handprint was forming on the glass of my door. It looked like a child had just pressed their palm against it from the outside. There was nobody standing there, just the wet gray print appearing out of thin air. I didn't reach for my boots. I slammed the truck into gear and floored it. I didn't care about my logs or the speed limit. I drove 100 miles without tapping the brakes once. I never parked in a turnout on that stretch of road again. To this day, I still keep my CB radio unplugged when the sun goes down. I was driving back from a late shift in North Georgia around 2:30 a.m. The roads out there are winding and thick with trees. On one particularly sharp curve, my headlights swept over a figure standing in a deep drainage ditch by the side of the road. It was standing chest deep in the murky water. At first, I thought it was a man in a tattered flannel shirt who had fallen in. Then the light hit his skin. It wasn't human skin. It was a dull, waxy gray, like an old candle. As my car passed, the thing didn't just turn its head to watch me. Its entire upper torso snapped toward my window in one fluid, mechanical motion. It moved like a machine, not a living person. Its eyes caught the light of my high beams. They were bright, reflective yellow, exactly like a cat's eyes in the dark. I couldn't see a nose or ears. I just saw those two glowing orbs and a mouth that was hanging open far too wide. It looked like the jaw had been broken or stretched out of shape. The darkness inside that mouth was absolute. I didn't tap the brakes. I slammed my foot on the gas and floored it. I felt the tires chirp as I sped away from that curve. My heart was thudding against my ribs, and I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead. I didn't look in the rearview mirror once. I just kept driving until I reached a gas station with bright fluorescent lights and other people around. I sat in my car for 20 minutes just shaking. I still won't take that back road after midnight. I was driving near the Oregon border around midnight. The road cut through a thick, heavy forest. My high beams were the only thing cutting through the dark. As I rounded a sharp bend, my lights hit something standing right in the middle of the asphalt. It is hard to describe. It looked like a hole in the world. It was a patch of absolute blackness, maybe 8 feet tall and shaped like a person, but with no features. It didn't reflect my headlights at all. Instead, it seemed to suck the light inside of it. It was a flat, empty shadow that felt heavier than the trees around it. As I got closer, it went from comfortable to freezing in a second. My breath started to mist up on the glass. Along with the cold, a massive wave of fear hit me. It wasn't just being scared, it was a deep instinct telling me to get out or I would die. Every nerve in my body was screaming at me to turn around. I didn't even think about driving through it. I slammed on the brakes and whipped the steering wheel around. I pulled a hard U-turn on that narrow road, nearly sliding my tires into a deep ditch. I didn't care about the truck or the tires. I just needed to put distance between me and that void. I drove 40 miles out of my way to find a different route. I have been driving for years, but I have never felt a terror that cold before or since. I was driving through the Appalachians on a Tuesday night. The fog was thick, and the radio was mostly static. I came up on a small stone bridge and saw a man standing right at the edge of the road. He was wearing a bright yellow raincoat. It was a clear night with no rain, so the color really stood out in my headlights. He was slumped over, just staring at the ground. I slowed down a bit, thinking he might need help, but something about his stillness made me keep going. He didn't even look up when I passed him. About 10 miles later, I saw him again. He was standing by a mile marker on a long, straight stretch of road. It was definitely the same guy. He had the same yellow coat and the same exact posture. I checked my speedometer. I was doing 65. There was no way he could have passed me. My skin started to crawl. I didn't stop this time. I pushed the car a little faster, trying to convince myself it was just a twin or some weird coincidence. 5 miles after that, I saw a lone street lamp near an old boarded-up gas station. He was standing directly under the light. The yellow of his coat looked sickly under the bulb. He was facing away from the road this time, but I could see his shoulders shaking, like he was laughing or sobbing. I didn't wait to find out. I floored it and didn't look back until I saw the lights of the city. When I finally got to my hotel and went to grab my bag from the passenger seat, I stopped. There was a small, dark puddle of water right where a person would have been sitting. It smelled like old pond water and wet wool. My doors had been locked the entire time. I was driving through a rural part of Ohio late at night. The cornfields on both sides of the road were tall and dark. Rounding a slow bend, my headlights hit something bright in the middle of the asphalt. It was a person doing a perfect handstand right on the yellow line. The person was wearing a bright yellow jumpsuit that looked brand new. They also had on a dirty, cracked clown mask with a wide, frozen grin. I slowed my car down to a crawl. I figured it was just some local kids pulling a prank for a video. I came to a full stop about 20 feet away, waiting for them to move out of the way. The second my tires stopped rolling, the person flipped over. They didn't stand up on two legs. They stayed on all fours like an animal. Then, they started scuttling toward my front bumper. They moved with a horrific, jerky motion, like a giant spider or a crab. It was way faster than any human should be able to move on their hands and feet. The sound of their palms slapping the pavement was loud in the quiet night. The panic hit me like a physical wall. I didn't wait for them to reach the hood. I slammed the car into reverse, tires screaming, and pulled a messy J-turn. As I swung the car around to head back the way I came, my headlights swept across the road one last time. The figure in the yellow suit was standing perfectly still again. They were upright now, watching me go. They raised one hand and started waving a slow, rhythmic goodbye. I didn't stop driving until I reached the main highway 10 miles away.